The narrative firstly helps us to distance from the problem story by naming it and talking about the influence and history and the taken for granted beliefs and ideas. And then it helps us to state a position. What's the kind of relationship we have and want to have with the problem story? And after that, and as we explore in this distancing, we find that there are alternative stories always present. We call them sparkling moments or unique outcomes. It's a moment when a person or a team maybe or a community tell a story and their eyes start to sparkle because it reminds them of a time where there was a different story happening. And because of the taken for granted beliefs and ideas in our society, because we were authorized to speak, those stories are hidden. They're not given any importance.
Say that again slowly. We got all the time in the world.
Because of the taken for granted beliefs and ideas in our society and how we buy into them, and because we authorize certain people to speak about who we are and what we can become, these stories are hidden. They're not important. They're not valued in any way. And so when people start talking about it, they kind of discount it immediately, like, oh, but that was an exception, that was just once. And it renders them blind for those one times that reveals the stories of other one times that tell a different story, an alternative story.
Can you give me an example of just a simple one about the alternative story that can emerge, that would be discounted, one off, and then you realize, no, that's the future? Somebody in the mines?
I'm thinking.
Yeah.
I was working with an executive once that kind of had the problem story was that I'm not good with relationships, like never good with relationships. And then I don't know how the conversation, it just unfolded, and at some point he was talking about the relationship he has with his daughters. And all of a sudden he lit up. But then he said, no, but it's not the same in the workplace, I can't bring those things in. But that became a starting point for us to thicken a relationship story that he has, that he could now bring into a different context that he thought was not allowed to bring into.
What did you say to him at that moment when you realized that was a sparkling moment, right?
Mm-hmm.
So what would your comment be to him at that moment?
It could be anything around, what is the smile saying? What is happening for you right now? What is the taken for granted beliefs and ideas in our society that would make you think that the story and relationship you have with your daughter aren't relevant when you come to work? So all the kind of distancing, separating things that we would use right in the beginning of the conversation, we would then use in our questions again. So the alternative story is always there, and that's our bias as we go into a conversation and in our work. That's what we're looking for, but we never force our idea. Something might sound good to us, but it's not for us to say that this is it. So we always ask, is this important? Should we talk more about this? But the moment we decide that this is a great alternative story, we're colonizing them again. We're deciding for them what should be the right story.
So you open up the alternative story. There's a naming step, isn't there? So describe how this then emerges into a naming step.
And so the unique outcome, and the person decides this is really important and I would like to explore this more. And then we give them an opportunity to again name the alternative story in their own language. We might offer suggestions, but it's for them to say it. It's so important that it is in near experience language, that it's something that they can feel, that they can own. So when we talk about kind of taking back the pen for your life, that is really something that they are writing in their own language. And so we go then through the whole process of, so how would this story influence your life? And they then look into the future, if they would continue this way of being.
What's the name this man came up in the
Oh.
relationship world?
For example, this executive's problem story was called The Fireman, because he just felt as a financial director of a company, he's the last one to know about stuff, and he's the one that needs to fix everything. And so the metaphor for his story was this man walking up the steps to his office and to his computer, dreading every moment, wish that he can just leave. And so he had the wish for the blue sky leadership. And so in the narrative work, we don't decide what that would mean. So that person thickens the story. And so when he tapped into the relationship that he has with his daughters, and I think it was about, he had the story about himself that he cannot connect with people and it's difficult. And so when he related to his relationship with his daughter, he realized that there were moments, and he was reminded of moments he had with his colleagues that wasn't that difficult and didn't take that much effort. And so he's daring to explore some new relationship. Yeah.
And the name he gave to it?
It was the blue sky leadership. So relationship was a part of the blue sky leadership story that he's now living into. Yeah. And so, can I continue with the influence?
Yeah.
So the influence of the story on the person's life. We also talk about the beliefs and ideas now in the alternative story that would support the story. So people imagine for the first time, and I think what happens when they start to challenge the taken for granted beliefs and ideas, it's like a sacred code you break. You know, you've always imagined this is the way things are, and now you kind of saying, oh no, but I don't agree with that. And so people write down their own beliefs and ideas that would now support the story of the blue sky leader. And also who would they like to authorize now to speak about this story? And so a whole community of people emerge, and things emerge. Some people choose their dogs as their community of concern to support them in the new story, because these people know stuff about this person that they might have forgotten because of the world we live in and the single stories we sometimes believe about ourselves.
So maybe an example of what who he authorized.
This leader then chose his daughters, definitely, and he had a couple of friends, but there's the story around work-life balance and burnout in the business world, and so he said, because of work-life balance, I don't get to my friends anymore, and but he listed a couple of friends, and it's just amazing. I had a conversation with him a couple of weeks ago. And so for the first time in his life, he went for a 10-day holiday to a place where he didn't have any cell phone reception, spent time with his wife, which he never had time for, and his best friends, which he said he had never had time for. And this all happened in a year. And so for me, it's just amazing that the power of the repair. There's a woman, Hilda Lindemann, that wrote about damaged identities, and she called the work narrative repair, and that's the source of where we can really negotiate a new identity, because the repair needs to happen in the story. But I would say it's more than repair. It's reconstruction. It's rewriting. We don't necessarily repair anything. So we're living into a new story that comes to find us as well. It's like we live into and the story also finds us.
And how did he show up differently at work as he's climbing the stairs to his office?
So now as he kind of walks the stairs up to his office, I asked him, do you dread it now? And he said no, he's looking forward to it because he's no longer alone. So all of a sudden, because he has used the gifts and the competencies he has already with his relationship with his daughters, with his team members now, and being interested in them and having a relationship with them and sharing the load with them. He's no longer alone, doing the fireman job. There's a whole community around him, a team, which is no longer just a team in a workforce, but a community around him that creates a different way of being.
Can I say something else about the connections and the support group he has around him that changes
Okay.
his way of being there, and then just leave it at that.
Okay. So now in the workplace, he really he knows about relationships more than he thought he knew, because there's a reference of an alternative story that informs his way of being with his colleagues, that now opens up a possibility for having real conversations about life, how you're doing, and a real concern for one another, and no longer being alone in thinking that I have to do this all by myself as the fireman in this business.